With the private sector so weakened by this recession, the federal government is the only entity left with the resources to jolt our economy back into life.
The $840 billion stimulus bill pumped money into every community in the country to pay for things like transit infrastructure, tax breaks, weatherizing homes, and keeping teachers on the payroll. Economist Veronique de Regie is a senior research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University and an expert on the stimulus.
The administration said that unemployment would reach likely 8.8% without the stimulus, but that with the stimulus it would never reach that level, and in fact it would start going down really quickly. The reality is that actually it's gone way past the 8.8% and hover above 9% for the last 2 years.
Reason TV did a case study looking at how the stimulus money was spent in one community in Obama's backyard, the town of Silver Spring, Maryland, a commuter suburb of Washington, D.C.
Even if you were to believe that government spending can trigger economic growth, the money is never spent in a way that is consistent with the condition laid out by the Keynesian for it to be efficient.
Nearly 400,000 men and women will go to work rebuilding our crumbling roads and bridges, repairing our faulty dams and levees, bringing critical broadband connections to businesses and homes in nearly every community in America.
In fact, the U.S. construction industry shed about 1 million jobs in the year after the stimulus was passed, and 2.5 years later, the industry still hasn't recovered. Maryland's specialty trade construction industry, which handles big infrastructure projects, has shed about 8,000 jobs since the stimulus was passed. Meanwhile, stimulus money has steadily paid the salaries of only 600 construction workers in Maryland since the middle of 2009. So why did the stimulus create so few construction jobs? For one thing, many of the projects paid for by the stimulus would have happened anyway. The resurfacing of this highway in Silver Spring was the first stimulus project in the nation to get shovels in the ground. It was also fairly typical. It was a routine repair job.
Instead of actually thinking about where the money would need to go to hire those idle resources, infrastructure spending went to jobs that were already lined up, or it went to actually pay the salary who were already on the job.
But Maryland got $771 million stimulus dollars for transit infrastructure projects. So why didn't all that extra money have a bigger effect on the economy? Well, Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley cut infrastructure spending more than enough to offset any gains from the stimulus. See, before the stimulus, Maryland's Transportation Trust Fund paid for highway repairs by collecting a special gas tax and other user fees. After the stimulus money was available, Governor O'Malley raided the fund to the tune of $861 million over the next 3 years to pay for things that have nothing to do with infrastructure. Even if you account for the stimulus money, which totaled $771 million, state funding for transit infrastructure still saw a net decrease of $90 million after the stimulus was passed. Large government contractors got a disproportionate share of stimulus funds, according to an August 2009 report in Government Executive.
The fastest way to spend government money is to spend it on channels that already exist. Give it to government contractors that you've already hired to just do more of the same thing. And that goes against the philosophy of the stimulus.
That's what happened in downtown Silver Spring, where $138 million in stimulus grants and contracts went to 46 organizations, but just 3 firms got 51% of the money. These 3 firms were major government contractors before the stimulus was signed. In fact, the stimulus money they received pales in comparison to what they were already getting from other government contracts. Take Palladian Partners, a communications firm in Silver Spring. It's received $97.5 million in government contracts over the past 12 years. After the stimulus was passed, the National Institute of Health, which is Palladian's biggest client, gave the firm $795,000 stimulus dollars to disseminate information about how the NIH was spending stimulus money. With the project 80% done, the firm has also been well paid for what it's accomplished. It built a website that aggregates press releases and reprinted news items from other websites. So far, it's contributed 29 original articles to the site, averaging just over 1,000 words each. It's allowed the firm to hire 2 new employees, neither of whom was unemployed before coming to Palladian.
A California solar energy company called Solyndra burned through more than $500 million in federal loan money, taxpayer money, only to declare bankruptcy earlier this month.
The Solyndra bankruptcy may be the biggest green jobs fiasco paid for by the stimulus, but there were others. The stimulus also financed a $500 million program to train and recruit 80,000 people to work in green jobs. With the grant more than half over, the program has found jobs for only 8,000 people. In downtown Silver Spring, a union-backed organization called the Transportation Learning Center participated in that program and received a $5 million grant. The money was to teach new green job skills to public transit employees and to recruit and train 3,095 people to work in the transit industry. But a year into its grant, the Transportation Learning Center got permission to back out of its commitment to place people in jobs because of changed economic conditions. So now it's using the entire grant to teach new skills to transit workers who already have jobs.
The spirit of the stimulus shouldn't be to get people who already have a job and already are doing things to get more money to do the same thing, just bigger. Government spending should be actually going to places where unemployment is very high, going to people who are poached from unemployment lines.
We're going to weatherize homes. That immediately puts people back to work. What would be a more effective stimulus package than that?
So the idea of stimulating the economy through spending, you want the spending to get in the economy right now.
4 months after the stimulus was passed, Governor Martin O'Malley held a press conference at the Silver Spring home of Sonia and Richard Lowry. The weatherization program was underway, and then it nearly ground to a halt. In the first year, Maryland weatherized only 279 homes, or 4% of its goal of 6,800. Nationwide, $5 billion stimulus dollars were set aside for weatherizing homes. A year into the program, just 8% of that money had been spent. A February 2010 report by the Department of Energy's Inspector General found that the job creation impact of what was considered to be one of the department's most shovel-ready projects has not materialized. The main holdup was a concession to organized labor. The workers paid with stimulus money had to earn at least the prevailing wage for their area. That created enough red tape to paralyze the program in its first year. Before workers could be paid, Maryland, like every state, spent months conducting detailed surveys to determine average wages and benefits for every job function in every county. Today, Maryland is racing to spend the remainder of its weatherization money before it's forced to forfeit what's left in early 2012.
I think the main lesson of the stimulus is creating jobs is a very complex process, and certainly it can't be directed by a top-down institution that pretty much fails at everything it does.